The first serious fight I ever broke up, I was only 13. I had an older friend who was 17 who got stabbed in the stomach and nearly killed. And I dived straight in the middle of it without a thought for myself and disarmed the guy, dragged my mate out and got him to the hospital, who nearly died from it. So he come across the road and got in my car, and as soon as he got in, I whacked the central locking down, I pulled out a 9mm, chambered it in front of him and rammed it into his kneecaps as hard as possible and screamed in his face, asked him if he'd want to walk anymore. I wasn't actually threatened at gunpoint. They actually tried to kill me. I was just so lucky to get away. And as I walked out the house, there's these two guys like on the other side of the street walking down, and they froze and they looked at me. And all of a sudden I saw this guy's arm drop down. I see a silhouette of a gun. And he just come running across the road and started firing at me. If you're going through hell, keep going. No one's going to do anything except for you. And if you change yourself, that's going to change your life. You've got to go out and do it. No one's handing it to you.
What's the worst thing you've ever done?
Worst thing I've ever done that I'm prepared to admit was probably...
Welcome, Marcus, to the Adversities to Asset podcast. I say that because some people still might be thinking that it's turning adversity into an asset. We actually changed the name. So it's Adversities to Assets, a little bit cleaner. And, I've got a bit of a description here. And the first picture that pops up is yourself and Dave Courtney. Now, I didn't realise Dave was actually that small. Either that or you are massively bigger. Are you bigger there than you are now?
Yeah, I was a lot bigger then. I was about 19 stone there.
So I don't know if anyone can see that, but this is one big guy. So, I mean, I think it's relevant to start talking about Dave because obviously it was only a week maybe ago that we found out he passed. But you were close friends with him?
Yeah, I was close friends with Dave for probably the last 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
I met Dave through a mutual friend. I was invited to go to the Ministry of Sound one night to the rave that used to go on there. After I finished my work at Door in Margate, I went to the Ministry, and about 4 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Courtney walks in with his entourage, and I got introduced to him, and I didn't stop laughing for about another 4 hours. I think we were just chatting away. We got on so well, so we swapped numbers, and our friendship carried on for quite a long time.
And any work with him? Any collaboration with your businesses?
Not really, no. A lot of people used to think. I mean, it got to the point because I was building up my security company then, and so Dave was it was a useful connection. It was a useful connection in both ways, I suppose. But a lot of people thought I was working for Dave, and then when that started to happen, it sort of upset me a little bit because people were saying, "Oh, like, you're his boy. This is his company. It's not yours." And so I sort of distanced myself in the last 10 years a bit. But for the first 10 years, we used to party a lot together, and I used to really look forward to coming to London. It was a way of relaxing and chilling out, getting away from my area wherever I knew me as a doorman.
Obviously, I don't want to say anything bad about Dave because, lovely guy. I met him on this podcast. Tell me a little bit about the dungeon that he has at the back of his garden. Not saying that you've been in there.
No, I've never been in the dungeon, thank God. I didn't feel safe in there.
But it's like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of...
Well, yeah, it's only above.
How it's positioned anyway.
When he said I've got a dungeon, and I said it's not even a dungeon; it's above ground. It's a garage.
So it's a garage with a couple of swings in it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, fair play for giving that a go. I think that's most guys' dream. So at least you tried it out.
Yeah, I suppose don't knock it till you tried it. But yeah, I didn't. No, definitely not a bit of me.
Fair enough. Cool. So just to introduce you, we have the label for you of the UK's most notorious doorman, and I'm sure there's lots that goes with that. And as I always like to do, but we'll do this a little bit quicker than usual so we can get into the meat of things. Mm-hmm. What started that off? I mean, what brought you into that world? Because it's never usually a case of, do you know what? I'm going to be a doorman.
No,
it usually starts off a little bit younger, right?
Yeah, well, it was never something I planned on being. Growing up, I got bullied all the way through school, every school, infant school, junior school, senior school, everyone. I don't know why. I was quite a tall lad, and I used to get picked on by the older kids.
How tall are you, by the way?
I'm shrunk now. I've shrunk 3 inches. I used to be 6'2".
Really, shrunk 3 inches?
I've lost 3 inches in height because I've got spinal stenosis.
Right.
So yeah, I've had a spine operation and all sorts. But anyway, so I was 6'2". But when I was 13, I was like 5'11". So in school, I was like a beanpole. There was no meat on the bone. I was like a little tall, skinny kid. And I got picked on a lot. So, and even to this day, I just hate bullies. So I got to about 13, got fed up with being bullied, went to the gym, the local boxing place, learned how to fight, and I stopped getting bullied, And then in later life, I think I was at 15. We used to sneak into this pub in Broadstairs. There was a little group of us who were all quite tall and older looking. So we was drinking in there on the weekends for a couple of years. So we were like regulars at 15, 16, 17.
Yeah. Used to be able to get away with it back then. Well, actually, a lot before when I was younger, but you used to be able to get away with it.
Yeah, by the time I was 17, they really looked at me as one of the regulars. And then a big fight kicked off one night, and I ended up breaking it up, throwing the people out. And when I sort of came back in, the landlord went, I said, you're here every weekend. He went, I'll give you free beer. He said, if you do that, look after the place. So although to me, I wasn't a doorman, it was like, free beer,
Yeah.
So, but that's really probably my first door job. But properly it got started when I was about 18, 19.
And when you had that first door job, how did you feel?
It was.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I suppose it just sort of came naturally to me, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have very much confidence in myself and my abilities then, and certainly had no training. It was just an instinct, if you like. I mean, I remember breaking up the first serious fight I ever broke up. I was only 13. I had an older friend who was 17 who got stabbed in the stomach and nearly killed, and I dived straight in the middle of it without a thought for myself and disarmed the guy. And dragged my mate out and got him to the hospital, who nearly died from it. So the instinct has always been there to sort of get involved, if you like.
Did you have the bully's face in your mind as you were sort of pounding them in, or was that kind of more an unconscious?
No, it's just I just wanted to stop the trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and
it,
is that
really
how it continued to be throughout your life?
Yeah, that's how it continued later on. I mean, I had a pretty bad motorbike crash when I was just a week before my 18th birthday. I broke my left leg in 12 places, nearly lost my foot. And I spent 2 months in traction, 6 months on crutches. I was told I'd never walk without a limp. I wouldn't be able to do sports or ride motorbikes again and all that crap. Anyway, when I got out of the hospital, the first thing I did was join up a gym, started training, and that's what really sort of started putting the size on me. I really went there to get my legs right, but I ended up putting about 2.5 stone on, I think, in the first 6 months, just naturally. And then I started, because I was in the gym, I started hanging around with the doorman who trained in there as well. And then a couple of times, little scuffles broke out in the bars they were in, and I sort of ended up jumping. You couldn't stand there and watch them, so I jumped in and helped out. And next thing you know, they said, "Well, you're pretty good. You give me a job."
What makes you different from the majority then? Because there's a lot of people who would be petrified of doing that. They would always think about the risks, what potentially could happen, maybe even the guilt and the remorse or the empathy for the other person that they're hitting. Do you think that you avoid of those things? Do you think that you just saw a different perspective?
I don't know. I think, initially it was just, I looked at it as a part-time job. It was a way to earn some pretty good money in a few hours. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was actually, when I left school with no qualifications, I had a big row with my headmaster. So I left school with no qualifications, and I went and got a job on the council cutting trees down. So I was an arborist, tree surgeon. And I did go and get qualified at that. I did that for a couple of years. But it didn't pay a lot of money. I was working for the council. I mean, my take-home wages was £84 for a 40-hour week. I then got a job on the door. I was getting £35 cash in my hand a night. So I did Friday, used to do Thursday, Friday and Saturday and earn more money than I could all week. But so I did both jobs for a while. And then eventually I just thought, this is crazy. I'm earning such much better money in such fewer hours, and I was getting better and better at it. So I decided to go full-time as a doorman and just jack the daytime job in. So then my next goal was to go out and get myself a gymnasium, because I was then, by this time, really into my training, and I wanted to do a bodybuilding comp. So that was my next.
You also wanted, I guess, to get
I wanted to get bigger. Well. And, it was great. It went hand in hand.
Is that when you were kind of this size?
Yeah, that was much later. That was, but
okay.
Yeah, but I got pretty big and pretty strong, and it helps obviously if it helps being big and strong and capable. Did you enjoy winning those fights, or was it because you mentioned that it was just to pay the bills, but was there an element of power that came with that? I suppose I'll put it this way, I'd rather win than lose. Yeah, but it's not. It wasn't really about winning. It's not really about having it's not like stepping in a ring and getting a trophy, is it? Normally 9 times out of 10, I never went looking for a fight in my life, ever. never, ever have I sort of thought, oh, I'm going to start a fight with someone. That's the last thing, because I hate bullies. So it would be really contradictory to my, the way I am. But if I see someone picking on someone, I mean, it's got me in plenty of trouble, out in the streets, not where work, but like, literally I've seen guys beating their missus up outside an off licence, and I've run out of my car, gone over and chinned the guy, knocked him on his arse. And the funny thing is then, 9 times out of 10, the woman will get up, then phone the police on you.
Leave him alone.
Yeah, he beat my boyfriend up.
Do you know what? It's funny. I saw that recently. So I was out in London somewhere. I can't remember where it was now. And I saw, been 4, it's hard to put perspective on it when you're a bit older, but it must have been 4 14-year-old boys. Mm-hmm. And they were literally grabbing this girl by the scuff of her neck, almost grabbing by the hair and pulling her about. And I can't remember what I said now, but I said something like, boy, fucking leave her alone or whatever. And then the 4 of them turned on me and started going, you fucking what, mate?
Yeah, you want
and
some?
I thought, they're probably going to stab me. So I thought, just leave it. Because again, she was like, leave it alone. So I thought, I can't win here. But it's crazy, isn't it? Because I had a, how old was he? 18-year-old friend. And he was out on a night out, and he was going to a nightclub, and he got into altercation with a group of lads. And the altercation that he got into a group of lads, they were actually on their way. You only find this stuff out afterwards when it goes through court and stuff, but they were on their way to stab a doorman, funnily enough.
All right. Nice crowd then.
Yeah, because that doorman had slept with this 17-year-old mum. Okay. So they'd taken a big 6-inch kitchen knife and they were going there to go on the door to stab him to...
He didn't rape her, he just slept with her.
Just slept with her, but obviously it was his mum. And this guy had just come out of prison, just served 3 years for stabbing a school kid on a school bus.
Oh, my God.
We don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But on the CCTV, you can see it. They're scuffling on the ground, and he had his hood on, and as he sort of leant forward during the scuffle, the kitchen knife came out, 6-inch kitchen knife came out onto the floor, and they both looked at it. And that moment where you're thinking who's going to pick it up?
Who's going to get it first?
One of them picked it up and just went, and then just stabbed him straight in the heart and murdered him.
Jeez.
And the guy was only 17 years old, and now he's got a life sentence. Jesus. So I think about those things this time. And also because I was young, when I was younger, when I was 17, 18, I had absolutely no understanding of consequences. I could have gone down for life, and I actually don't know if I would have cared. I had it was some piece missing. Older on a little bit later on in life, you're like, I want to live a good life.
The consequences. Yeah.
I've got a family. I can travel. It's much better to be in here than it is to be in prison.
Yeah.
But for some reason, consequences don't quite have the gravity that they do when you're younger. So you think, oh, prison's prison. I'll get out at some point. You don't think I'm going to be in there for the rest of my life. So I can understand that kind of mentality, and that's why I guess when these little kids read up, I looked at them and I just thought, I'm just going to turn around and walk away because. If I was them, I probably would have stabbed me.
That's the trouble, though. Most people these days, they won't get involved. I mean, and I don't blame them because that's what does happen. And like I say, I mean, you'll end up, I've had it happen to myself. I had a couple in a bar I was working on my own, very busy bar, about 400 people in it. I was on my own doing the door. And this guy had a massive row with his missus, screaming and shouting at her in the bar. So the bar staff called me over. And, it's really awkward when you're trying to intervene in a couple, So I went over there anyway. And as I got to him, the guy turned his back on me and marched off through the crowd with his 2 drinks in his hand. And I thought, right, the way he was going to end up by the front door where there's like a reception area. So I thought, I'll wait for him to get there naturally rather than drag him through the crowd. So he got there and I went, excuse me, mate, we need to have a bit of a chat. And he's like, yeah. And he went to glass me with the 2 glasses. He first with one hand, I smacked that out of his hand. Then he went with the other one, I smacked that out of his hand. I grabbed him around the neck and I put a sleeper on him, which for those who don't know, I grabbed him by the neck and I shut off his blood supply. Yeah. So within a few seconds, he was unconscious, sitting on the floor. So I then dragged him outside and leant him up against the front, near the front door. He woke up about, 5 minutes later, a bit groggy. And he's like, I'm coming in. I went, mate, you're not going anywhere. I said, you're not getting back in there. Get my missus. And I said, okay, I'll get your missus. So we've got someone to get his missus out. As soon as she came outside, they started arguing again. They're walking across the car park, and all of a sudden he's turned around and he sort of punched her straight in the chops, knocked her down, and then he started kicking her around the car park. Okay, so that goes right against, that just sets me off. So I've run across the car park, In fact, one other lad got to him first and sort of rugby tackled him off of her. And then as he got up, I was sort of there as well. And I smacked him straight in the chops and I broke his jaw. He fell on the floor. He had to have his jaw wired. It was a pretty good shot.
This was outside.
This is outside in the car park. But his wife then got up and phoned the police. And next thing I'm arrested for GBH with intent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, it's crazy because, like you mentioned before we started the podcast, you don't want to glamorize too much about things that maybe aren't true, and there were certain things you do, but you're a nice guy. There's lots of positive things you've done, and we want to talk about those things. Same with me, but at the same time, there are some sort of things that I'm less proud of. But it's interesting to create this dialogue because it's an insight that I used to have, which is bizarre and warped on reflection. But I used to actually quite enjoy fighting bouncers.
Yeah, why is that? People do that. I don't know.
I tell you why, and this is the honest truth, and I don't think many people would admit to this, is because there's an element of security in there. Because and you probably know, well, there ain't, because I got this back room or whatever. But if I'm fighting, like these 14-year-olds in the street with a knife in their pocket, I'm more wary of them.
Yeah.
With a bouncer in a club, there's CCTV, they've got a job.
They've got a licence.
They do a certain amount of restraining, and they might go a little bit over the top, but to a large part they're going to do what they need to do and they're going to kick you out. Also, the good thing about it is when they kick you out, you don't get arrested.
Well, not normally.
Well, I never got arrested. I used to literally fight as many people as I could, and then the worst case scenario is they kick you out, and then I just, what I used to do sometimes, this is absolutely bizarre. I used to, I had my shirt ripped off by this point, so I'd find a homeless person, I'd give him a $5, take his shirt, put it back on, and then get in another queue for another nightclub because but if you did that out on the street, bang, you'd be arrested straight away.
If you did it 30 years ago, you'd have got a good idea, because when I started doing the doors, there was no cameras.
Right.
There was no cameras, there was no body cams, there was no radios, there was nothing. So, if someone got chopsy, you could give them a slap and tell them to go home.
And that's interesting because you mentioned, so just a bit of context to the most notorious barman. Not barman, sorry. Doorman. Barman's a little bit different.
Yeah.
You've knocked out thousands of people, right?
Yeah. A lot of people just, they can't get their head when I say that. And they say, I'm not trying to boast, but look just
but you're probably doing it a long time, right?
Look, work it out for yourself, right? Okay. So I was working 6 nights a week, okay, for a lot of my career. So I was working also troublesome venues. So there was normally a fight, maybe 3 or 4 fights in one night.
Yeah.
But
with 3 or 4 people involved.
Yeah, so I worked it out like this, and I think I said this before on a podcast. It was if I hit one person once a week, that would be like 52 people a year. So do that for 10 years, that's 500 people.
Yeah.
Do that for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's 2,000. Yeah?
That makes sense.
And that's only one a week.
And so how does that work then? Because obviously, like you mentioned beforehand, you get away with whatever you want. Later on in life, there's a body cam, there's restraints, you've got to have your band, which says you can't do certain things. Is it more case of now you can only twist people's arm? You can only, you'll always get a dig in the ribs or something, won't you?
Yeah, I personally got to a point in my life where I was getting arrested quite often for, if I hit someone, because of my size and my ability, if I smack someone, they're going to get hurt. Let's face it, if someone attacks you and you decide to hit them, you're not going to go, just punch him lightly. You're going to hit him. So you're going to break something. And it got to the point where, I got arrested for 3 GBHs in 1 year. And I genuinely I thought, I'm going to end up in prison at this rate, or I'm going to kill someone, which I didn't want to do. My goal always was to stop the trouble, get them out. That's it, really. So I had a doorman called John Morley, who was a 3rd Dan black belt in Aikido. And I actually had private lessons with him every week for 2 years. And I never took a grading in it because they can use that against you when you go to court. But I learned everything up to about a brown belt standard. Yeah, and it really changed my life, because then I didn't first of all go to hit someone. I would always go to lock them up, or use a choke on them, or twist their arm, or put them in some sort of grip, whatever. But I would get them out with minimal fuss and with minimal damage. So that to me was a lot better way of doing it. So that's probably about, I think I was probably late 30s or something when I sort of did that. And so that certainly calmed things down a lot from the arrest point of view.
Yeah. And there's a lot of association with, doorman and security being a bit of a cover-up, or not necessarily a cover-up, but a kind of part of the parcel with being a gangster. And then there's association with I think there's association with the Krays and the Kray funeral and drugs. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of got wrapped up in, not into that life, but into that accusation.
It sort of all comes together, doesn't it, as a package? I mean, the thing is, when you're, not so much when you're just a doorman, but certainly when you're running your own security company, and at the height, I had over 200 staff working for me.
I mean, that's impressive in itself.
That's a lot of people to keep an eye on, because you can't trust them all.
And how did that grow? Just, I need 2 people, now I need 5, and then...
My very first contract, when I started the company, I had no work at all, and I had 6 friends who were doormen, who were good doormen, who were out of work. So I had 6 people's numbers, effectively, and I decided to start the company, and I went around looking for a contract for 6 months, and I was just about to give up, to be honest. And all of a sudden, I got a phone call from a club in Folkestone called La Parisienne. It was a big club, and the guy said, "Look, my whole door team's walked out. I need 16 doormen. Can you help me?" And I only had 6, and I went, "Yeah, no problem. I'll do that." So I took on something, and I managed to pull it off. So that was my first contract, and this went from strength to strength. But it took me 10 years to get to 50 staff. And I was in a sort of comfort zone, if you like. I was earning a nice little wage, but I wasn't too big that it was quite easy to manage. But then I went to that Robbins thing, and it just went crazy after that. And it went like one year it jumped to 120.
Let's take a reminder to come back to Tony Robbins, because I think people watching will definitely understand a lot about that. It'd be interesting to hear about that. And the growth you had with it. But just stepping back to that question about accusations about the sort of criminality.
As my company was getting bigger, obviously being a head doorman, and every area I went into, every area we've got new venues in new areas. Every area's got its own sort of drug dealers. It's got its own hard men. It's got the reputation of the locals. So I had to I was going around into new areas where I'd not worked before, and you've got to find out who's who. Now it's better for me to be their friend than their enemy, but if it comes to it, then I'll have to be their enemy. But a lot of the time, I like to say, when I met Dave Courtney, I became friends with Dave Courtney, and I enjoyed his company. So I wasn't in business with Dave Courtney. But to the outside people, they think, he's got doorman, he's got clubs. Oh, Dave's a dodgy. If they think that Dave was a drug dealer, then they start associating you. But you've got to know the dealers are in all the areas, because you've got to be able to keep them out or manage them. Yeah? But it doesn't mean you work with them. But see, what a lot of people do is these sort of people will come through the door and shake your hand and show you respect.
Of course.
So
they want something from you, don't they?
Well, in doing that, all of a sudden they're known associates. Yeah. So
someone might get a picture.
People get
of
the
it
wrong idea of it, because they're shaking your hand or paying you, a bit of courtesy, and likewise it goes 2 ways. So all of a sudden they're getting this opinion, but especially when I did the Kray's funeral. I mean, bear in mind what I was doing. I do security, and that's what I did for the Kray's funeral.
Especially if you look the way you look and you're knocking people out and you're shaking hands with Dave Courtney, they're going to think, well, it's not his bloody accountant, is it?
It probably didn't help matters that I was enjoying going to raves, and I used to love dancing my arse off all night and having a good time. So I wasn't an angel that way. But I was never a dealer, and I never even allowed dealing. And I had loads of offers of people. I had loads of people around me said, "Oh, look, Lee, let's deal in your clubs." I mean, no, I'm making good money doing what I'm doing, and I was expanding, and because of my reputation was good, I was getting more work. So I was making that legitimately, and no way I wanted to sabotage that.
So these weren't your clubs; they were clubs you were sort of looking after, right?
Yeah. We worked for people like the Thorley Taverns and Luminar Leisure. Who were very big back in the day,
And are you allowed to mention kind of who the top dogs were in that sort of criminal world at the time, other than sort of Dave, things like that?
It was just, I don't want to sort of name names really on a podcast. There was loads of local people in every town you've got. We did Gillingham, Dartford, Ashford, Folkestone. Every town's got its
postcode,
its little
kind of territories.
You got your sort of like,
and they might not seem like they might not be as well known, but they're probably equally as dangerous and influential.
They're equally as dangerous. But I mean, this is why to run that sort of security company. For one, you've got like 200 guys who all think they're tough and hard working for you. So you've got to at least be perceived as being a little bit tougher or a little bit more naughty than they are. Otherwise, they're going to start playing up. So you've got to have control of your staff. Then you've also got to have a reputation that hopefully precedes you. When you take over a door, if that reputation is big enough, then people won't want to challenge it. they won't want to come through the doors and do what they want. You know what I mean? They'll pay a bit of respect.
How did you do that then? How did you create that sort of self-perceived authority to kind of put them in their place without obviously putting a gun to their head or whatever?
Well, I pretty much did that a couple of times.
Right, okay.
I did exactly that on one time, actually.
Okay,
yeah,
tell us about that.
Yeah, one of my doormen tried to steal a contract off of me. And this club was worth, I don't know, a few £100 a week, which, you know, when it adds up, you've got so many clubs. Anyway, this guy he actually saw my invoice, went in one day, and at that time, I was only making a couple of pounds an hour. It was in the early days. And this guy decided to put a quote in and try and steal the contract that he was working on. And when I got to hear about it, I actually went to the club on a Thursday night. I told the head doorman to put him down the front door so he was level with the street. So I parked my car right opposite. And I called him across and I said, look, I need to have a chat with you. So he came across the road and got in my car, and as soon as he got in, I whacked the central locking down. I pulled out a 9mm, chambered it in front of him and rammed it into his kneecaps as hard as possible and screamed in his face. Asked him if he'd want to walk anymore.
Yeah.
And luckily, he said he really did want to walk and he didn't want my contract.
So those are more associates. What about if there was a drug dealer, a bit younger, thinks he runs that part of the area and was in there and he was like, I'm selling drugs in here and it's fucking you can do
Then I'd probably
about
just
it.
ban him and he wouldn't get in. And if I found out who his dealers were, I'd ban them as well.
Right.
It just depended. I mean, if people could behave themselves, if people come in and don't cause a problem, great.
And things happen behind the scenes, you kind of close a blind eye.
I'm not saying I don't turn a blind eye to it, but like I always used to. I mean,
it happens, doesn't it? Regardless of what you do.
I've had guys come into bars where I've worked, and I've actually said to them, like, listen, guys, we've got cameras in the toilets, da-da-da. If you're going to go in there, you're going to get caught. If you're going to get caught, I'm going to have to throw you out and ban you. I said, go outside and do it.
Yeah.
Literally, I don't want to see it. If I don't see it, I ain't got to deal with it. You know, I mean, look, it happens. We all know. If you live in the real world, anyone out there listening, watching this, whatever, I would say probably higher than 85% of the population have smoked a joint or had a line or done something, whether they'd like to admit to it or not. You know, especially going through the 90s and, you know, the last 20, 30 years. I mean, even now it's rife. I mean, unfortunately, I wish people were still taking pills because they were so much happier. You know, nowadays everyone's charged up on some horrible sniff that's cut to pieces. Yeah. And they want to like fight each other and stab each other, and it's horrible.
And also, I don't know if you've heard of the exact compound. I think it's called cocaethylene, something similar than that. But there's actually been a study that shows when you mix alcohol with cocaine, it creates an entirely different drug, which just puts people on a fucking crazy one. I know I can relate to it because that was my drug of choice. I didn't like cocaine on its own. It's not like I didn't like it, but it kind of put me a bit on edge. Drink made me fucking.
Well, they sort of go hand in hand for a lot of people because a lot of people start to get drunk. And then they go, right, I need to get a ticket now to sober myself up.
Yeah, and then they go, fucking hell, I'm a bit wide, I need to have another drink. Before you know it, you're 4 days later and you're in the kitchen.
You spent all your money, you talk shit for the whole weekend.
So you mentioned beforehand that there was a scenario in which that you got threatened at gunpoint and sort of not burgled, but someone came to your house. Sort of what happened there?
I wasn't actually threatened at gunpoint. They actually tried to kill me.
Right, okay, even worse.
It wasn't trying to scare me.
It's not like they put a gun to your head, they tried to shoot.
No, they weren't trying to scare me. I was just so lucky to get away.
So, and they did that just because of an ego thing?
What it was, like I said, I threw a guy out he was a VIP. I let him in as a VIP.
And it's funny, just quickly before you go into that, I bet you've been told that about 1,000 times, I'm going to fucking kill you. I'll be here when you work. But did you believe that one?
No, he never said it.
Oh, he never said it?
No, so this is
because I'll be honest, I mean, I've said that before and I've got no intention of...
You get that thousands of times, right? I mean, excuse me. I mean, people quite often, you know, you throw them out and they're like, yeah, it's a shit club. That's the first thing they tell you. It's a shit club. I don't want to go in it and I'll shoot you. I'll come back and I'll do this. And that, when I was a young doorman, that used to be like a red flag to me. I'd go out and smack them straight away because I hated being threatened. But obviously these days with cameras, you can't do that. But no, these guys didn't say anything. I had an altercation with a guy. He was off his nut on coke. He was starting arguing with one of the doormen. I tried to intervene and try and pacify everything. He smacked me in the chops. I smacked him back. He went tit for tat. Anyway, I ended up picking him up. He wrapped himself around me. I ended up picking the guy up and I threw him across the road and broke his ankle. So he went back to his family and told them that 3 doormen beat him up and jumped up and down on him. And
this sounds familiar. This wasn't in Watford, was it?
No, it was in Margate. No, it was in dear old sunny Margate. But it was... And I knew I'd pissed off a really naughty family, you know.
Why is that? Just because you'd heard of them?
No, because they were actual guests they were VIP guests that night. I just didn't clock the second guy. I clocked the first one, let them both in. The other fellow I didn't really pay a lot of attention to. So, and had I have really realised who he was, probably would have tried to deal with it a bit calmer than what I did. But he did actually attack me first. But anyway, so he's gone back and told...
And when you say VIP guest, does that mean that there's a section for naughty people?
No, let's put it this way. The people that owned the bar, the nightclub, originated from London.
All right.
And this was someone that they knew. It was their son and his friend. So they knew this particular family. I won't put their name out on here, but there's this particular family were very well known and not to be messed with, let's put it like that. And of course, they were doing what anyone would do. Their son comes home, he's got a broken ankle, and he says a doorman done it. So they want to go and beat the doorman up.
Yeah.
But if they'd have actually seen it on camera, what happened, then they'd probably give their son a slap.
Yeah.
Because he was the one causing the problem.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I have a client of mine who runs a security business, actually. Close protection stuff for sort of like royal families and things like that. And he said 90% of his job, well, he didn't say that exact percentage, but he said majority of his job is not protecting the people from the public, it's protecting the people from themselves, specifically like the sons. These are the billionaire sons are the ones that cause absolute carnage, and he had to end up beating up the own son to stop him from putting himself into the line of danger, which is insane when you think about it, isn't it? You've got to protect him against...
Over the years, I've looked after quite a few VIPs, like, pop stars and stuff like that. I mean, because we used to have the contracts at places like the Winter Gardens and stuff, so you'd look after celebrity, people. And they can be a real pain in the arse. And once they know they've actually got someone looking after them, they're even more of a pain in the arse.
Of course, because they're like, what are you going to do? I've got my man over.
I've got him there, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And also, Daddy's got loads of money. You're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So you had an altercation with this guy.
Yeah, and anyway, so the owner, bless him, he's not here these days. Mr. Frank Thorley, he's passed away, but I worked for him a very long time since I was 23. And
how do you know if you don't mind asking?
I'm 61.
Wow. Normally I give people a little bit of that's impressive, but that I didn't expect, so well done. You're doing well. You're obviously still regular in the gym. I'm
still doing a bit in the gym, as much as I can, yeah. Not as good as I used to be.
You've got better skin than I have. You got a good skincare regime?
Stem cells.
Right, okay. We need to talk after, but go on, Gary.
Yeah, so anyway, so he knew straight away about this because the guy's fathers rung him up and obviously, your doorman's beat my son up. So he was up and down to London for 3 days, and after a few, he said, "I think I've calmed him down. You're okay. Don't worry." But I did worry, and it happened it must have been August or September, and then nothing happened till 5th of November. Bonfires all going off, and the fireworks and the crackers. No one's gonna overhear a gun, are they? So I actually took that night off. I come out of the house an hour earlier than what I would normally have left the house, and as I walked out of the house, there's these two guys on the other side of the street walking down, and they froze and they looked at me.
You didn't recognise them?
Didn't recognise them, but they froze and they looked at me and they muttered something to each other, and then they sort of walked on but still kept staring at me, and I thought, so there's a vibe here that's not right, anyway, so I'm sort of getting in my car and I was looking, I've still got my eye on them, and all of a sudden I saw this guy's arm drop down. I see a silhouette of a gun. And he just come running across the road and started firing at me. So
did he just fucking miss you like Matrix?
Yeah, I was in the car by this time, and I'm sort of off the driveway, and I just ducked down and shot off. And literally,
was he like a little hoodie? Was he someone's accomplice? Was it him?
I can't remember exact. I mean, but they weren't. Their features weren't hidden, but it was a dark street. You know what I mean? Was
it them or was it their accomplices?
No, they paid someone to do it. It was someone who was definitely paid to do it.
Because, I mean, obviously I've got a background of not this kind of lifestyle, but, did I have a gang? Probably not. But I sold drugs. I was violent, went to prison, all those sorts of things. But it was nothing like that. I can never imagine getting to a point where I've had an argument with someone and think I'm going to kill them. Because is that usual? Or is that just... I don't
know. I mean, the thing is, if they'd have wanted to scare me, they could have done that from the other side of the road. But to run across... with the gun out and start firing, I'm pretty sure. I mean, listen, it did scare me. I mean, stupid.
So out of all the stories you've heard and all the experiences you've had, that was kind of a bit unusual in terms of gravity compared to what you did versus what the repercussions were.
Yeah,
usually, you've got to do something pretty naughty to be killed off.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
But yeah, again, I mean, I've
had a few friends killed like that. I've had a few mates of mine just shot dead on their doorstep, over silly fights.
True.
I nearly got shot dead one time. Someone paid $5,000 to get me shot, and it wasn't even me that was actually the one who done it.
$5,000 as well. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was you supposed to have done?
Oh, that was a different situation. That was the CID actually called me in one day and said, we need to speak to you. We need to speak to you urgently. I said, what have I done? What's my doorman done? They said, no, there's nothing like that. We just, we need to talk to you. So I went in and saw them. They said, you're going to get shot this Friday. I said, what? I said, yeah, someone's paid $5,000.
At least you found out
Someone paid
beforehand.
it. And I said, well, who's going to shoot me? They said, we don't know. We know who's paid the money. So I said, well, give me a name then. So
I'll give him $5,500 to fuck off.
So they gave me a name anyway, and I went and knocked on his door. I found out where he lived, and I knocked on his door and I gave him my business card. And I went, I understand you paid $5,000 to have me shot this weekend. I wouldn't do it if I was you. I said, apart from that, I don't really want to get shot. I said, there's going to be a lot of my staff be really pissed off if they haven't got a job next week. I said, and I know where you live.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen. But it turns out it was over.
Was you scared when you did that?
No, it was fun stuff. But this guy had paid the money, but it was someone got beaten up or thrown out of a bar in Whitstable and beaten up. But it wasn't my doorman. Someone told him it was my doorman. So I was actually going to get shot over something that wasn't even connected to me. That's how easy. That's how easy it is. You know.
So it's surprising that a lot of these people, like your Dave Courtney and stuff, have been able to last so long.
Yeah. It is, really.
Do you know another person I've had on the podcast, Kevin Lane?
No, I can't say as I do.
Done 20 years for murder. He's been in prison.
That's why I haven't seen him.
Yeah, he's been in prison the whole time. Fair enough. Just curious to know sort of any sort of backstories of any of these lads. So your life for the last, you said 40 years has been on the door, and that's been, your bread and butter. Is that something you do now, or have you moved into other things?
I retired from the doors about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So up until then I was still...
What was the reason for that?
Twofold really. Well, first of all, the lockdown happened. So that literally closed my company overnight.
Yeah, I heard that happen.
Virtually 95% of my business went out the window. I was actually losing £2,000 a week through lockdown.
Do you know? Do you also know Sean West?
No, I can't say as I do.
He had a big security firm that completely went bust during it wasn't the pandemic actually. It was the war in Ukraine and the Russian. All the money just went.
Well, that was the start of the problems, and then I had my license taken off of me, revoked, my SIA license.
What was that for?
That was because in Eastbourne, one of the areas that I cover, I had about 20 or 30 staff down there, and I had an area manager working there for me, very good area manager, name's Alan Sidders, or Sid as we call him, and he'd been working with me for 10 years, so I had no reason to sort of his work was great, and he was actually an instructor for the SIA to teach the courses, so he knew it inside out, the legislation. But anyway, two of the guys working under him managed to work without a license. One of them's badge had expired, and he told him he'd renewed it, but Sid should have checked it. And the other guy had actually falsified the expiry date on the badge, so it must have been a good job because Sid accepted that. So unbeknown to me, these two guys have worked without a license. The SIA found out about it somehow. They came down like a ton of bricks on me, and I didn't even know about it. I gave them all my records. I said, I have all my records. I gave them everything, and they took me to court, and they took my license off of me, and I actually got a criminal conviction out of it. I can't remember what they actually call it, but it's some weird thing that I got nicked for. So I've now got this criminal conviction, and I lost my license. Well, without an SIA license, you're not allowed to be the director of a security company.
All right, can you still do the door? Or?
No, you can't do anything. I basically just stopped my livelihood. I mean, I could have put it into someone else's name, but bearing in mind I just lost a load of money with the lockdown, then I had that happen, and then following that I had...
And who regulates that stuff? Like, say, for example, I said, I want you to come and, be my security. Is there a law that says, no, you can't?
Well, you can't do it without a licence.
Even if it's not on the door of an official nightclub?
You still can't do it without a licence.
Right, so
not legally.
I guess it's in case if you have to actually use force, then you're not insured.
If you wanted a bodyguard, for instance, then you've got to have a CP badge, a close protection licence, which is another step up from a front door licence. But basically anything now, you've got three sort of levels. You've got a security guard who can only be a security guard. He can't be a doorman. Then you get the door supervisor's one. Now you can be a doorman or a security guard. And then you go to be the CP badge, which you can be close protection, doorman or security guard.
That was the other name I wanted to mention for some reason. Lee Sampson.
Nope.
Him?
Oh my God.
He was Princess Diana's bodyguard.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So he I guess, is close protection, but is there another layer above that?
I think my friends actually knew him.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got friends that have talked about him, but I didn't know him personally.
Fair enough. Is there another layer above the close protection, or is that kind of as high as it gets?
No, I mean, close protection is close protection, but it depends on what job you get as to where you sort of are, I suppose.
Of course, yeah.
And there's all different levels of CP work. I mean, Yeah.
So one thing I saw in doing a bit of research about you, and one of the interviews that I saw, the title was Thailand Gangster. I pass over to you.
Thailand Gangster. Well, I'd say when I first started going to Thailand, I was probably about 37, 38.
But you absolutely loved it.
I loved it. I
love it now.
Yeah,
I bet it was even better back then.
I was single, I'd just broken up with someone. My friend took me over there. My friend Graham Bassam made me go. And I had an amazing time, so much so I fell in love with the place. So I started...
Where did you go in Thailand?
I went to Pattaya.
Pattaya? I've not even heard of that.
Pattaya? You never heard of Pattaya?
No, I've been...
Walking Street.
Been Bangkok, Koh Samui, Koh Phangan, Koh Tao, Koh Lak, PP, and that sort of more touristy place that's down the bottom. Can't remember the name of it, but I went to a few places. But...
Yeah. Well, Pattaya's, if you fly into Bangkok and then drive... Chiang Mai. Yeah. Well, that's where I'll be going soon. I'm back there next week. But you got
a missus from there as well?
Yeah, I'm married to a Thai lady. We've been together for 11 years.
How's that going?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
She's an absolute superstar.
That's
Rugnapar, her name is.
Did you meet her out there? I take her.
Yeah, a mutual friend sort of introduced us, actually. She'd broken up with a boyfriend and I'd broken up with a girlfriend, and they sort of tried to matchmake, and it actually worked.
Nice.
Yeah. I took her out for a Happy Meal. I've been stuck with her ever since.
So tell us about your journey and how you became a Thailand gangster on this YouTube video anyway.
Well, really, like I said, I had my sort of life going on over here, and it was nice. When I first went to Thailand, it was lovely. I found this place, it's really warm, it's really crazy, it's got loads of nightclubs and
chilled
bars. Anyway, so I love to party them days, so I thought it'd be great to buy a place there. So I had a bit of money sort of saved, and I was looking actually at the time buying a place in Spain. And
it was cheap back then as well.
I had this. I've still got the house now. I'm trying to sell it for about £100,000. I had this house built, which it's on a big plot of land. I've got a swimming pool, 3 bedrooms, double garage.
Why are you trying to sell it?
Because I'm not
don't
using
really go there
it.
as much.
I don't go there as much as I used to, and I'm not really a party animal anymore.
Is it in the party central?
It's not in the central, but it's outside of Pattaya.
Pattaya, I've not even heard it. Whereabouts is Pattaya?
Pattaya is like, you've come sort of down south from Bangkok. If you fly into Bangkok and then go about an hour and a half down, and then Pattaya's by the coast, so it's like a...
Is there nice touristy bits around there?
It's
like
beautiful.
Food, massages, pool bars?
There's 50,000 working
girls
in the town.
How much has it gone up in value, your villa?
Hardly at all.
I'm in.
I'm trying to sell it for about 200,000 at the moment.
Okay, that's not a bad investment.
So if I'd have put, 20 years ago. So 20 years, if I'd have put 100 grand into a property here 20 years ago, it'd be worth a fortune now. But anyway, so I started my journey over there. I started doing that, and pretty much immediately at the same time, I wanted to get involved over there with some of the charity stuff. So I started doing that as well. So I used to go there. First of all, it was just I'd be working for like maybe 6 weeks and have 2 weeks there. And so I'd have this little break, break in the sun from the stress of running the security agency. But in fact, it wasn't really a break because I'd probably still be running it with my phone and whatever. I remember actually being in hospital. I had a shoulder operation in a hospital over there because it was cheaper than here. And I remember actually sitting and doing my rotas for all my staff with a mobile phone and my laptop in my hospital bed.
Wow.
Because I didn't have area managers at that time. So I used to run it from there. But it was pretty awesome. But at first it was like I got away from the trouble by going to Thailand. And then in the end...
And when you say trouble, is that fighting on the doors?
Is like, because I've always been a doorman from quite a young age. So if I want to have a night out in Margate, for instance, everyone will come up and shake my hand non-stop all night. It's like, hi Marcus, can I buy you a drink? How you doing? Da, da, da. So it's nice.
That fella punched my fella.
You threw my brother out or something like that. So it's nice being known, right? And most people I get on well with, but it was also very nice to find a place where I wasn't Marcus the doorman and I could just go out, and I had some different mates.
And in Thailand, I bet no one had a clue.
But then what started happening over the years...
You're just that huge white guy.
This thing started happening where I ended up getting involved in fights because people would start on me or pick on me.
In Thailand?
For some reason, they wanted to prove a point.
British?
Let's beat the big guy up. or
Australian or
they'd
something.
be bullying someone, and I'd step in and bully the bully. So I ended up getting involved in quite a few silly things over there. But I had some great friends there. Some really good friends. I'm still in contact with most of them now. A lot of them have moved away from that area. They sort of grown up.
What branded you the gangster just because you was having some fights and you had that sort of backstory?
Yeah, I sort of suppose the crowd I sort of knocked around with were all a bit naughty.
Thailand? locals?
Not Thai people, but like Australian
expats,
people,
yeah.
English people. So Thailand's a bit of a melting pot. For a lot of people run away from stuff that's happened in England.
Yeah.
They run away with they've made a bit of money somehow, or they're wanted by the police. And I had friends out there on the run, or they were wanted back home. So I suppose and like it always attracts like. So I suppose my sort of dodgy look, I ended up having mates that were all like they were in England.
Yeah, you spent 40 years with those kinds of people, whether they're done good or bad, and you're going to resonate and connect with them.
Yeah.
So you brushed on it briefly, but something I really want to touch on, because obviously this is turning adversity. Well, shit, I mentioned the wrong name.
Yep.
It's Adversities to Assets. That is cleaner, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I was like, I made the wrong decision. Turning adversity into an asset was a bit long.
Yeah.
So the whole point of this is had some difficult times.
Yeah.
By the looks of it, this was a part of your life. You enjoyed quite a lot of it, but there was some difficult times throughout. I mean, trying to get killed, I guess, wasn't there?
There was some.
So let's touch on what are some of the worst things that have happened to you, or the worst things that have happened as a consequence of your lifestyle, maybe some of your staff members?
Well, I mean, business-wise I think in 2009, I think everyone can probably remember that there was a huge recession suddenly hit us. Wasn't really expecting it. And I was, up until that point, my business was growing year on year. I was getting more staff, more contracts, more. And I was on a high. I'd set myself at that point. I'd fallen in love with Thailand. I decided at that point I wanted to retire in Thailand at 50. Which obviously I didn't do. but so I set myself a goal to buy one house a year, because you can't really work in Thailand without a work permit. It's a bit complicated, but you can own property through a limited company. So I set up 5 limited companies, and I ended up buying 12 houses over a 6-year period.
In Thailand?
In Thailand.
Wow,
so all paid for. I paid from...
And was that paid for all with your security money?
From my money from security.
That's paid from your Thailand gangster money, wasn't
This is it. So this is one of the reasons why people thought I was, So everyone's like, hey, he's buying up all this stuff. He must be a drug dealer.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. I was making, I tell you what I was making. If I remember back to the pit, I was making about £4,500 a week. And we're talking in the 90s. So that was
probably
a lot of money.
Yeah, probably 20 grand a month now, maybe.
Yeah. So I was, £4,500 a week then.
Oh, a week?
A week.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. So
is that because of you were making the money on your team?
Yeah, because I was making like £3 an hour and I had 200 staff working.
Right.
So, every when you work that out, it all adds up. So I was...
and just to sort of sidetrack a little bit, what do you think allowed you to build that business so quickly? Was it because your reputation and they was associated to you?
Yeah, it seemed that way. I mean, it was a twofold. There was the fact that one of the clubs the first club I ever got was the one in Folkestone, the Parisienne. That was actually bought a couple of times, but the last time it was bought by Luminar Leisure. Well, Luminar Leisure at that point owned 400 clubs in England. So getting into that company was probably one of the best things that happened to me. I was also with Thorley Taverns, who had expanded at that point. So instead of having like one little bar, I had loads of bars with Thorley Taverns. I had multiple bars with Luminar Leisure. They used to have big nightclubs in every town. So I had one in Eastbourne, one in Sittingbourne, one in Gillingham, one in Dartford, one in Thanet, and all these big clubs. Rather than like now, people have got a little bar with one doorman on it or 2 doormen. These had teams of like 10 or 14 people. So obviously the money making aspect of it was much more. That's where it just snowballed really. So it all happened at the right time. My reputation was getting more known, but I was also in with a company that was expanding into all these towns. So I was getting, work through them. So they were using, they've now changed everything. That's one of the things that changed in 2009. I lost 3 big contracts in a month. So whereas I had like 100 grand spare to invest in Thailand every year, I did that for about 7 years. I put about 700,000 into it cash. But then I ended up losing 75 grand a year in profits overnight. So that was when I started. I'd never faced a time where things were going backwards, and all of a sudden, I was sort of like, so go, let's succeed. All of a sudden, shit. I was like, I've got to be careful now. I mustn't spend too much money. And I'd just remortgaged my house then as well, so I could buy some more land and more houses that I got really cheap in Thailand. So I'd got a big debt around my neck, and now my income had been sort of sliced in half.
Thailand debt or?
No, it wasn't. Basically, I was busy buying up these houses in Thailand and some land out there, which were great investments. But I'd run out. How was it
to build in Thailand? Was it a nightmare? Or was it?
I didn't build. I bought existing. I bought off existing
built in
villages.
Bali, and it was an absolute...
it would be a nightmare. It would be an absolute nightmare. Yeah. it was bad enough renting them, to be honest. Going backwards and forwards and having like
you can
12.
just do that, and then the fucking whole wall just falls down.
Oh no, these were nice solid houses. Yeah, lovely houses. But I mean,
that's probably because you went make sure they fucking are.
It was the tenants that were the nightmare. You know, I had so many. Yeah, I had all sorts of problems with tenants over there because I wasn't there all the time to manage it.
Yeah.
So I was in and out of the country. So at one point, I was doing a month on and a month off. So I was literally I was doing 4 weeks in England trying to run the security company and build that, and 4 weeks back in there trying to manage these 12 houses and have a bit of a party as well. So yeah, it was quite manic, quite hectic, but yeah, it's good fun.
Interesting. So yeah, there's a couple of things I want to ask. One is a bit of a curveball, but I'm just curious to know what might come up. What's the worst thing you've ever done?
The worst thing I've ever done.
That you're prepared to admit.
The worst thing I've ever done that I'm prepared to admit was probably chasing a guy off the cliff.
Go on, explain a bit more into that.
I was working in a club in Margate, and it was a bank holiday weekend. We had a big coach party in from one part of London, and they kicked off, and I think it was only 4 of us working, but there was about 30, 40 guys on this coach party, and they decided to smash the place up, basically. Mm-hmm. So we managed to get them out, but it was a big brawl. It was a real big brawl with them, and it was pretty tough. But we were out in the street fighting them, and they didn't want to go away. You know, we got them out, but they didn't want to leave. They wanted to just come back and fight. And I think I personally knocked out 3 or 4 of them that night. But there was one guy I really wanted to get my hands on him, and I chased him, and I shouldn't have done. But I chased him, and he kept running. He was one of the main instigators of it, and yeah, I really wanted to see him a smack, and so I chased him, and he ran, and I'm not a very good runner because of my broken ankle from years ago, but I hobbled after him anyway, and he ran towards the cliff top. Well, he didn't know it was a cliff top, and it had this fence, and the vandals had kicked the fence through, so there wasn't really a fence there, and he thought he was just ducking through to something else, and
ran straight off.
Yeah.
Was he all right, or did he die?
I don't think he was very well.
We'll leave it
at that.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And what about your staff? I mean, did your staff get in? Because obviously with 200 staff, there's going to be some that want to be the next gangster. There's going to be ones that...
I had problems with staff.
Did some people take it too far to the point where you're like...
I had to sack... I had one guy who was a head doorman, and I found out he was dealing drugs. Mm. So
what about...
I sacked him. And
what about things like guns and things like that?
Oh, this guy called it on big time. He actually managed to get about 50 guys to come and smash the club up. And I was in Thailand at the time.
So he was selling drugs in your...
He was a drug dealer on the side. I don't know whether he was doing it at work, but the police started sniffing around, and I ended up telling him he couldn't work for me. Mm-hmm. He wasn't very happy about that situation.
He must have been maybe doing it inside. Probably. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much sense for him.
When you've got so many venues, I used to try and visit every main venue once a week, but obviously a visit is not the same as being there all the time. Mm. So I used to try to, keep my sort of finger on the pulse. But once his attention, this guy got too much attention, and I didn't want to be associated with it, so I got rid of him. And he said, "You can't sack me." I said, I just have. You're sacked. Mm. But he said, I'm going to bring loads of guys down. And I said, "You haven't got loads of friends. Fuck off. Do one." Anyway, but he did turn up with about 40 guys or something to smash the place up. And I was in Thailand at the time, so I couldn't do much about it.
So what do they do? Did they do it?
No, I actually got some help, outside help. Most of the people I rung up, it was a serious threat, and I was on the phone all week trying to sort it out. Most people didn't want to get involved in it because it was big. It was a pretty heavy situation. But I had
come down with guns and stuff.
Oh yeah. So I had one crazy friend who I'll just call him Chopper from North London, who's a lunatic, a good friend of mine to this day. I rang him up and I said, "Look, I need you to do this. I need you to stop this. It can't happen." He said, "Yeah, no problem. What do you want me to do?"
Are these friends, or you got to pay him? Or
I paid him. He offered to do it for nothing, but I said, "No, you're taking a serious risk."
Big deal, yeah.
I paid him $5,000.
Okay.
And back then in the 90s, that was a substantial amount of money for a night's work. Mm-hmm. But he brought down 2 carloads of lunatics from North London, and they made sure it didn't happen. And the guys did turn up, and they did actually get in the club. But they dragged the main culprit outside, and they stuck a shooter straight in his face and said, "Look, if no one pays for their drinks or a glass gets broken in there, you're getting it."
Wow.
And
so this is a scenario where violence does sometimes win against violence.
Yeah.
Is there any other way of de-escalating it without that in some scenarios?
I don't think they were up for a chat.
Tie up their missus or something.
Yeah, you're risking a kidnapping charge, isn't it? It's not good, is it?
Well, I guess you could also get charged for putting a shooter in someone's face as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would have dealt with it myself, but I wasn't here. Mm. And it worked out. It worked out well because no one did get hurt.
Yeah.
On
No, it worked
both
out well
sides.
in that scenario,
On
but I bet
both
there's been
sides.
scenarios where it hasn't.
You
as
know,
well.
I mean, part of me was actually wishing that he did actually kick off, and he did actually kick. Yeah, I didn't like the guy.
If he'd have shot him in the face or whatever, would that still have been $5,000, or would he have wanted a bit more for that?
No, he knew what the job was, to just stop them getting in. They shouldn't really have got
And
in.
it's outcome focused,
Yeah,
and
the
whatever
outcome
needs to be
was,
done needs to be done.
know your outcome, as I've been told.
Yeah.
When you go into a situation, try and know your outcome, work towards your outcome. And the outcome of this was, I didn't want them in. I didn't want the trouble. But they did actually get in, because the actual door team that was supposed to be working there actually just let them in. They went, oh shit, and let them in.
It's got quite a lot of balls from those guys that just had guns in their face, and they're thinking, all right, it's time to have a night out. Straight in you go.
It was a bit. It was. They were very surprised. No one knew about it. The only person who actually knew was the manager of the club. I didn't even tell my door team, because I didn't know who I could trust. And as it turns out, I couldn't trust them.
How did you feel when this sort of stuff was going on? Was there anxiety? Was there?
Oh, heaps of anxiety. Yeah, well, that was
you
one
thinking
of the,
like you're going to lose your life, maybe?
It was one of the worst clubs I ever worked. Zen's in Dartford. It was. I mean, I used to go to work there. In the end, I used to have to wear. I hate wearing like bulletproof vests because they're so bulky. I like wearing tight t-shirts, but I used to have to wear this bulletproof, stab-proof, horrible thing. It was like a suit of armour. I used to have to wear that in and out of work. And for a while, I carried a piece as well, because I was under serious threats at times, because of the people I'd barred or because of the people I'd had fallouts with. And there was a
I
bunch.
take it they're like unlicensed kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
You don't.
I don't do that now. No, I'm retired.
No.
I am retired for the benefit of the tape. I am retired now.
Of course. But I mean, is there any opportunity for security professionals or, the close protections to have certain weapons to protect themselves?
In this country, you'd have to be very, very. I mean, you can go and get the firearms training and all that and do the CP stuff, but you wouldn't. I don't know anyone who's got a license to carry,
especially on the door.
I mean, especially no one on the door is going to have that.
Stop fucking around.
That almost reminds me of a funny story, actually, about two doormen who were, you said about people threatening to shoot you?
Yeah.
And they don't normally come back. And this one guy, these two guys, who were really good friends of mine, and they got threatened. And this guy went, I'm going to go and get a gun, I'm going to shoot you. And he did, he came back with a gun. So he's standing there, there's a doorman either side of the door, and he went, you're not funny now. And he's like this, pointing the gun, he's like that, right? And they're sort of like, they're not quite sure what to do. But as he pointed it that way, this one guy just grabbed his arm and snapped his arm over his knee. So he's literally, I mean, they were big, strong doormen, these guys. Mark Farrelly, his name was, I'll give him a mention. And Dave Chilman was with him, who's another pal of mine. And I bet
he's known as a legend after that.
They snapped this guy's arm, right? Anyway, the police were called. Anyway, they arrested the guy.
He start screaming,
it was a
crying.
BB gun.
Oh, fuck.
So he might have broken their skin with it, but that's what you get for pretending to have a gun.
All that effort as well to go home and bring it back
bring
and
his
act the
BB
big
gun
man.
back. He got his arm broken.
Oh, fucking hell. So talking more about, so just quickly on it, so you just got the reputation of sort of gangster Thailand just because you had a bit of money and you were having a few rucks and the kind of people sort of caught on to the fact that you must be.
Yeah, I got called in. I got pulled in once for a murder charge, but it wasn't me. I didn't murder anyone.
Yeah, they would say that, wouldn't they?
But they, that was a bit worrying. There was a guy actually he was kidnapped by a group of big fellas covered in tattoos, and guess who's big and covered in tattoos? And I was
black t-shirt.
And when they went to his house to speak to his wife, where he'd been kidnapped from, there was a picture on his mantelpiece and I was in the picture. So I'd had a night out with him and all my Australian mates. We'd been out on the piss, a few weeks earlier, and I'm in the picture. I'm standing right behind him, but I didn't know the guy. I only met him on that night. I knew half a dozen of the guys, but anyway, he got kidnapped and they tortured him and they killed him. And they were trying to get money from his family, because he had a rich family apparently. But so the police were pulling in everybody that was in the photograph. So we all got pulled in, but I was actually shitting myself. So I thought, oh God, you hear about these stories about people getting wrongly accused abroad.
But you don't want to go to jail in Thailand.
No, it's not a place you want to spend a minute, let alone a year, But I got called in twice for that.
I'd rather do 1,000 years in the UK jail than 5 months in a Thailand jail.
They actually give you, if you do a year over there, they count it as 2 years over here if you come back and continue your sentence.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it should be 5, really.
Yeah, I mean, you live in about 15 people a cell or something stupid.
You're lucky to survive over there, to be honest.
I know a lady who, I won't mention her name because she's very secret about her story. She's not quite ready to share it yet, but she was 19, beautiful girl, living in Thailand, living in Ibiza, got convinced to smuggle pills across somewhere into India, actually. Yeah. I don't know if that was the stopover, but but she got caught and she got 20 years.
Oh my God.
And she said she was living in, 15 people to a cell. They didn't feed her. They didn't give her water. She gave birth in the cell.
How did she get pregnant in the cell?
Well, I think she was pregnant beforehand,
right, okay.
and she gave birth. They didn't give her any support whatsoever. She just gave birth, and then she now had a daughter.
God.
It was apparently the most traumatic experience ever. But I mean, I need to get her on my podcast. I'm going to write that down. I can't remember her name, but I'm just going to write it down before I forget. Get pregnant lady from India, drug smuggler on podcast. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to talk about is because I love the turning adversity into an asset. So there's been some adversity there. There's been some difficult life challenges. But one of the things you do now is you do a lot of charity in Thailand, don't you? So I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, that's always been a bit of a passion for me. But I started, right, if you've got time for it on this, my first ever charity event I put on, major charity event. I've always been a charitable person ever since I was a kid. If I was one of these people who'd be, giving money to a beggar in the street or whatever. But I got fed up with putting money into charity pots because, if you put £1 into a charity pot, probably 2 pence actually gets to the people that it's supposed to be for.
The CEOs to buy the yachts.
So when my very first charity event was like this. I had a friend called Charlene, her real name was, but we called her Charlie. Very beautiful girl. She was a croupier in a local casino. Everyone knew her. She was like, just a lovely person, really pretty as well, and a bit out of my league. And but she was a good friend to me. Anyway, and she got struck down with cancer. She got breast cancer, and she fought it for about 2 years. And in the end, she got told she was terminal. And she rang me up and she said, and you're the first person I've told. She said, I'm going to die. She said, do you know what? No one's even going to give a shit about it. She said, I'm just going to die and no one's going to care. And I went away with that and I thought about it. And she had 3 lovely children, by the way. And I thought about it and I thought about it. She racked my brains and I thought, I've got to prove, somehow I've just got to prove to this girl that people do care, right? And I may actually get a little bit upset when I'm telling this story because it sort of brings back a bit of emotion. But anyway, so I at the time, like I said, I had all these connections in the nightclubs and all this. And I had loads of friends. And so what I did was I went to Thorley Taverns and I had this club called Escape. I said, look, could I have the club? Between Christmas and New Year, is there a night when you're not using the club? It's clearly shut. Could I have it? And I told them what it was for. And everyone said everyone knew her. So they went, yeah, great idea. So I was going to put a charity night on. Right now, although she was terminally ill, she had still got a few months, probably 6 months to live or something. So she was still reasonably healthy at the time. So I put this night on, and it was a secret. I didn't want her to know about it. So it was very hard to arrange a party for someone in a little town without anyone knowing. But anyway, so I arranged it anyway. So I went to the DJs. I knew loads of DJs. I said, look, I'm doing this charity night. I need an hour of your best music, but I need it for free. I'm not paying you. So I got 5 top DJs donated an hour of their time to play their best tunes. I got the nightclub for nothing. I put the word around to everybody that no one was to tell her, but this is it. So, and at the time, she'd just finished her chemo and she was actually wearing a wig. And I said to I rang her up. I said, look, on the 28th of December, I said, I want to take you out for a meal. I said, over Christmas. I want to, I'm not working that night. Can I take you to Giorgio's restaurant and we'll go out for a nice meal? She said, I don't know if I said, come on, put some glad rags on, let's come out. So we went out and we had the meal and about 9 o'clock we finished. And I said, you know what? Do you fancy a drink? She went, no, I just want to go home. I said, please. I said, let's go for just one drink. So anyway, so we walked in this bar and it's like you go down the stairs into this basement bar. And there was like literally 400 people in there. And there's a big banner up saying, we love you, Charlie.
Oh.
And she walked downstairs, she went, what's going on? I said, remember you told me no one would care? I said, there's 400 people here that do. Right? And she was like, she burst into tears.
Wow.
Right? So she's bursting into tears and she's like, she's everyone's coming up to her and talking to her. She's, gone into this everyone's buying her drinks or whatever. Anyway, then what she didn't know was that I'd made everyone pay a £5 to get in as well. Right? So I charged everyone a £5. And actually one guy, really nice guy called Kevin, used to go out with Daniela Westbrook. Okay. And he put like £1,000 in.
Wow.
And Dave Courtney turned up and I made him pay as well.
He paid a quid.
He paid a £5. I made everyone pay. I made everyone pay to come in, right? No one got through that door without paying money. We actually raised £3,750 or something like that. So towards the end of the night, I've actually got it all in an envelope and I've walked over to where Charlie was sitting and she's still surrounded by friends. And I said, Charlie, listen, this is the best bit of the night. I said, this is for you. She's like, what's that for? I said, this is for you. I said, I told you this night is for you. I said, you do with this money what you want. She said, I'll go halves with you. I said, no, I raised this money for you and your children. You've got 3 lovely children. Now, I know I said you're terminal and I know you're going to die soon. I said, but you're still well enough to take all 3 children to Disney World or, in America. I said, what a memory for your children to have with their mum, right? And do you know what? She did exactly that. So she straight away booked up for Disney. She took her 3 kids to Disney World, and they've still to this day. I'm still in contact with her daughter, the youngest one, still messages me from Australia.
Wow.
And so that when it was such a good night as well, because we had the best music, the best people. It was like a proper rave night, but it was and everyone said, you can't just stop there, you've got to do more. Mm-hmm. So every year after that, I started doing charity work, and I started doing similar, but I used to find a different thing to put the money on. But what I found was...
Make-A-Wish
Foundation,
foundation.
we started doing things like places where battered wives and kids went, shelters. We started doing stuff like that at Christmas. It was always at Christmas. We used to do it every year at Christmas. Yeah. But I got fed up with the charities here. Everyone got greedy about it in the end, and children were actually writing me lists from Argos of what they wanted for presents. They wanted 100 quid worth each, and
I want a PlayStation 5.
So. And at the time I was going to Thailand, so I thought, this money would go a lot further in Thailand. So I swapped it over to Thailand. So I still did the charity events, but the money got spent in Thailand.
Yeah, nice.
And that's
it goes along further.
It goes a long, long way. We've done some awesome work over there.
We've done some bits in Bali as well, like some orphanages and some pet charities and things like that. And they're so appreciative, aren't they? Because they don't get the support like the Western world.
I can't do it all the time, but we normally do in around about March. We normally do a big event where we try and take as many children out for a day out to the beach, orphans that is. So the last one we did was last March, and we actually took out, I think it was 520 children. Which is a lot of kids, and we have to bus them all in, and we got food for them, drinks for them all day, ice creams for them all day, and we fund the whole lot. And we're so lucky. We've got about maybe 15 or 20 helpers who put my big guy charity T-shirts on, so they're all in uniform, and we serve up the food and the ice creams, and it's just awesome.
So is that the main sort of thing you do now then?
Well, no, that's one of them. But when I go back next week, I think I'm planning on going to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. I haven't been there since the lockdown. We've got some little schools.
Is that where your wife's based?
No, that's she's got some relatives up that way. So we normally make it a sort of a holiday trip as well. But we do some good wherever we go. So we were looking up there. We helped these schools out before. We helped actually build one of these little schools. And we had a school with no electric. How much it
cost to build a school?
I can't remember the exact cost, but we helped to build it. We put the floor in, we put desks in, we put, one of them had no electric, so I got a generator for them. One of them had no running water, so I got water purifiers to purify the rainwater. So they're up in the mountains. I mean, it's a 2-hour drive up the mountains. I'll be putting it all out on Facebook when I do it this year. I've got if I can mention it, Big Guy Charity on Facebook.
That's what you could call it, Big
Guy Charity. Big Guy was my nickname. So we called it the Big Guy Charity.
Like it.
And it's quite well known now in Thailand. And we just try and do a lot of good. Try and do as much as we can.
Love it.
But this year we're going to be visiting those. We're going to be spending a bit more time with them this year. Normally we're sort of running in and doing stuff and going to the next one. This year I'm going to try and slow it down a bit and spend a bit more time in the actual different places. Mm-hmm. So be good.
That is turning adversity into an asset. I love it. And I talk about this a lot, but, to not judge a book by its cover or even judge a person based on their previous experiences or things they might have done doesn't make any difference to the person you are or the person you could become or the other things that you're doing that people aren't aware of. They look at the headlines and they think gangster Thailand and knocked out 1,000 people and, big, bald, tattooed. They're just going to think, all there is to this guy is knocking people out on a Friday night. But there's obviously way more to you than that.
I always think that no one should ever be judged on their worst day.
Absolutely.
So
and what's your best day? Was it that event when you looked after that girl?
Do you know that was one of my? It's definitely up there. That was one of the most satisfying things I think I ever did.
And I don't think many people would do that as well. Even the people that haven't done some other things or have a certain reputation. I don't think many people would go out their way to really. It might put together a gathering of a couple of people, but to go to that extent. It's a lot to plan a party.
Do you know what? I did the first 10 years I was doing these charity events. I never actually called it anything. I didn't advertise any of it. I just did it, and I didn't put it out on Facebook. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I mean, locally people knew I was doing this stuff in Thailand, but I used to put charity events on, and I used to put on a charity ball and have raffles and all this sort of thing. And I'd get because I knew so many people. What I thought was I would use my popularity, if you like, my social network to make something for other people, to raise money for the less fortunate. And that's what I set out to do. It wasn't until I got with my current wife 11 years ago and I told her what I used to do. And she said, you've got to brand it. You've got to do something with it. And I said, I don't like boasting about it. She said, but if you don't boast about it, you can't raise more money. And so she talked me into it. And she proved her point. She put it out on Facebook and said, we're going to do this, take these kids out, blah, blah, blah. And I think within an hour, she'd raised like £1,000 or something on Facebook just from friends. But obviously it requires a bit of trust from people because it's not a registered charity. You know, we don't have a bank account in that name. So I've got an account which we use in Thailand. But I don't like to put it out there because people say, oh, yeah, that's how he got his houses. You know what I mean? But no, I don't. I guarantee we show everything we get donated. We normally show on the Facebook page, and everything we spend, we also show how we've spent it and what it's been spent on. Yeah. So it's
amazing.
Really, great.
Cool. Well, I'm going to ask one last question, so bear with us, guys. But first of all, if people want to find you and they want to look at your Instagram or your website or your charity, what's the best place?
Well, we started, I suppose it's probably on both nowadays, isn't it? But it's, Big Guy Charity on Facebook.
Okay.
And if not, just look up Marcus Joseph Redwood, which is
Marcus Joseph Redwood. Brilliant. And they can catch you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The question I wanted to ask you finally, put you on the spot a little bit, but if you can, I'm sure you have something there. So for anybody who is in adversity right now, they're in a difficult position in their life. They can't see the wood through the trees, if that's the expression. And they can't possibly comprehend, the possibility of living a good life and being someone that helps other people and, being able to smile and look back on all these experiences where there was a gun to their head and be like, it's all part of the journey. And
it is.
And I've now turned these things into assets and lessons to be able to build my character as a person, etc. That's this whole message. Yeah. If someone's stuck at this sort of frontal end where they just can't see through it, have you got a message or anything that you would say to them?
I think Mr. Churchill said it best. If you're going through hell, keep going.
I like it, yeah.
I mean, look, you never know. I've been through some very dark times, all right? We haven't gone through over here. But you just keep going. Yeah. Just keep going. Don't give up. Keep your dreams as well and chase your dreams. But no one's going to do anything except for you. And if you change yourself, that's going to change your life. No one's going to, it's no good waiting for the lottery win. It's not going to happen, or probably isn't going to happen anyway. It's got my luck. But, you've got to go out and do it. No one's handing it to you.
Amazing.
But it's all possible.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much for coming to Adversities to Asset.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure.
Real pleasure.
Take it easy, mate.